thank you very much for coming to hear me. As Masha mentioned, I'm a professor in the United States, and I live in Washington, D.C., and I work about a dozen kilometers away at the University of Maryland. My own background is I've been a professor for many years, longer than you guys are old. But I've also been a journalist and done a lot of other things. I am an American, but I grew up in Europe. I've lived around the world in Pakistan, Thailand, Middle East. This is my first trip to Russia, so it'd be nice to So today I'm going to talk to you about media, and I'm going to do two things. Yeah, I'm going to do three things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm calling media literacy, have you be media literacy. I'm going to talk about two studies that I have worked on with college students like yourself around the world. And I should warn you that I'm going to make you work a little bit. When I teach my own classes, I very rarely just lecture. A lot of times, even when I'm teaching hundreds of students, I'll wander the halls, the aisleways, and I will call on people. So I warn my students that if they wear bright colors, if they are looking bored, I'm much more likely to call on them. So just be prepared, all right? Partly for the simultaneous translation, I'm going to read a couple of things that are on my PowerPoint, just so they don't get overlooked. But those of you who speak both Russian and English will know that I'm not going to read my PowerPoints. That's boring for me. It's very boring for you. So if I'm not reading something that's up there, you don't really need to know it. Don't worry about it, okay? It's just pretty to look at. So this says, we are surrounded by media, and iPhones, mine's in there, with my computer, and my tablet. You know, I can't go without media. This is an amazing statistic. So this one I'm going to read. We now can create as much information every 2 days as we did from the dawn of civilization up until 2003. So if you think about the tsunami of information that's coming to us every 2 days, it's as much as all of your ancestors all together had to know all together. So even in your lives, things are speeding up. Do you all have fire hydrants here in the streets for your fire trucks? No? Oh, do you know what a fire hydrant is? Okay, in the States it's where the dogs go. But fire hydrant obviously spits out lots of water in cases of fire. But it's so much water and so hard that it's almost impossible to drink from. It's the same thing with the internet. There's so much information coming at us that it's hard to cope with. So what do we do? Well, okay, I'm saying you need to be media literate. I'm not going to use a lot of jargon today. This is perhaps the one phrase I'm going to use that's jargon. So what does this all mean? If you are media literate, you know how to evaluate media. And I'm going to get to that in a second. That's where I'm going to make you work. But you're going to evaluate, analyze media. How to use media. So, I need my iPhone. All those apps you download, how do you use them? What apps should you be downloading? And even how to produce your own media. I teach several classes, not skills classes, but just, I'm a historian by training, just history classes. But I still, in those classes, make my students make movies, tweet. And they say, but I don't know how to make a movie. And I say, that's okay. There's some 12-year-old on YouTube who does, and watch that YouTube video, and you too will learn how to make a movie. Because the rest of your life, you are going to be the people in whatever work you have. Someone's going to say to you, you're young, of course you know how to use media. Just do it. So if you're media literate, you're not going to be intimidated by all the new stuff that's going to come. You also, and this is my journalistic hat I'm putting on, if you're media literate, you understand the power of news. How you are part of news, and you're part of a global news system. Now I'm going to talk more about that in a bit. Now sometimes I actually put a picture just of the head up, and I say, what do you think of? Here is it a style? Is this a soldier? Or is this a cancer survivor? Depending on your own background, you have a quick response to it. But if you're media literate, you understand that there are multiple ways of looking at the same thing. And you know this in your own life. You know how your grandparents understand the world differently than your parents and differently than your friends. Here's another ad from the same bank. This is an international bank that uses these advertisements. The same word, courage. Courage in the face of tragedy. Courage bungee jumping. Courage public speaking. You probably all have an image that comes to your mind when you think, I need to be courageous. So different ways of thinking about the same word. This is probably my favorite quote in the field that I do. This is a very well-known media critic in the United States. And he says, we live in a world erected through the stories we tell. The media does that, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But we do it too. Do you all use Facebook here? Some people use Facebook? Do you use Facebook? You all use Facebook. Admit it, you all use Facebook, right? So, what's today? Today's Monday? Yeah. Okay, so when you went out to the clubs this weekend, right? And you posted things on Facebook, my guess is you put other things up there that you probably didn't tell maybe your parents about, or your grandparents about. Or maybe you did, but you might have omitted a few things. We construct a story of our lives, but so do we construct a story of the world and the news around us. All right. Myanmar. This is also Burma. So this is a website. It's just coming out of beta. It's called Maptia. And Maptia publishes travel stories. And it has, for this story, it has this photo, this photo, that photo, and that photo. It's a great website. Those of you who are interested in storytelling, check it out. So the photos you select to post on Facebook or to tweet or wherever you use your social media, they frame how your friends and others are going to see you. But so too do we frame the world. So if you're thinking about Burma, Myanmar, are you thinking about the people who live there who have a long history and who know it before the current regime? Is what you want to talk about Burma, is it about young children going to school? Is it about the religious traditions? Is it about work life? Most times we come to news, whether it's in the media or whether it's in our own lives, and we put one face forward, one photograph forward. So we have to select, we have to choose. And our choosing is essentially framing the news. So here's where I'm going to make you work already. Case study 1. What stories can a single photo tell? A very short media literacy exercise using an American example. I'm just going to show you 2 photographs. The first photograph, they both were published the same day in the same newspaper in the United States, the New York Times, which is the preeminent newspaper in the United States. They were published during our last presidential campaign in 2012. In our last presidential campaign, we had the current president, President Obama, running for re-election, and against him was opposition candidates from the Republican Party. So the 2 photographs I'm going to show you are photographs that appear the same day of 2 of the leading candidates. And I want you to tell me whether you think these are positive photographs. So I want you to pretend, as you look at each of these photographs, that you work for this candidate. And I want you to tell me whether you are happy that this is the photograph published of your candidate. Okay? So. This is of a man named Mitt Romney. He's running for president of the United States. And you are his staff. Russian staff. He's very broad-minded. So, do you like this photograph? Do you think this is a positive photograph of this candidate? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah? Huh? How come?
He's smiling.
He's smiling? Okay, he's smiling? Mm-hmm.
He's shaking hands.
He's shaking hands?
It seems like that he's our guy, he's one of us. Something like that.
Yeah, he's wading into the audience, absolutely.
Yes.
He's smiling.
In fact, I don't see any bodyguards somewhere around him, like no one's pushing people away from him. So,
He's accessible.
yes.
Yeah. I'm sure there are bodyguards, but they're not quite so, obvious, right?
No, people are smiling.
People are smiling. Yes, not just him, but in the audience, people are smiling.
The point is in the communication, so he's not closed, he's open and he's talking to people, smiling and everything. So this is communication, this is not a closed person.
Right.
He's,
Yeah, no, I think that's said very well. He's casual. His sleeves are rolled up. He's one of the people. Yeah?
And I think that it's the whole stage of the photo. Like, he's not in a presentation hall or somewhere.
Right. He's not on a podium.
Yeah,
Sitting
it
down.
looks like he's standing with the people somewhere in the back street or somewhere.
Right.
So he has courage to go there.
It also seems like he has a very big support. So there is people around him.
Right. Right. In addition to everything you say, there's an American flag in the picture. His name is in the picture.
Quite patriotic.
So as a staff, is this thumbs up? Yeah? We like this? Okay. All right. I'm going to show you just one more picture. It's the same party, someone else who is also running for election. Romney's the front runner. He's the person at this point in the election looks to be the candidate who's going to run against the president. The other person I'm going to show you a photo of, photo appeared the same day in the New York Times. Now you are staffers for the next person, okay? And you tell me whether you like it or whether you don't like it. Okay, ready? Drum roll, please.
Okay.
Okay, your staff for Rick Santorum. He was a senator in the Congress, American Congress, and now he's running for president. You work for him. You're the Republican staffers for him. Are you happy with this photograph?
Not really.
Not really. People are shaking their heads. Why not? Why don't we like this photograph of Rick Santorum?
empty space.
Empty space, right.
He's alone.
He's alone.
Like nobody supports him.
Like nobody supports him.
And he looks like he's quite self-centered to be in the center of the room, alone on the podium, with all the cameras on him. Like he's not going to care about people, he's going to steal attention.
And the nervous smile.
And the nervous
The pose of the mannequin.
Very close to a mannequin, yes, that's a good observation. People aren't even looking at him. A few, I think it's journalists in the room, they're not even facing him.
I think he's not happy with us.
So as a staff, we don't like this photograph, right? No.
It looks like he's standing in the court and saying,
Yes,
absolutely. Please, don't blame me.
Yes, exactly. All right. So it's obvious when you have compared these two photographs that one candidate is being treated more positively than the other. And we don't know what happened the next day. Maybe it was reversed. Maybe Santorum had a very positive photograph and Romney a very negative photograph. But here, when we juxtapose them together, we see a difference. All right. How many people look closely? How do you all understand media? Well, that was the question behind two studies that I did. So I'm going to walk you through some of the findings of those two studies. One's an American study, and then one's a global study. And then I'm going to come back and make you guys work again. Kind of like this. So, get ready. So, 2010, 4 years ago, my center conducted these studies. This is actually a classroom that I teach in. The very first study was 200 students. I teach a class of 200 students, so those were my guinea pigs. First day of class, they come into class and I say, welcome. So happy to have you in class this semester. Oh, and by the way, you have to pick one day, 24 hours, in the next 2 weeks with no media, nothing. All right? No phone, no computer, no music, no video game, no TV. You can't go to a club that has TV in it. You can't go shopping. If there's media around, nothing. And my students always go, ugh. Actually, the class has gotten fairly famous for this, so they know it, but they don't love it. As part of the project, they had to take a survey, online survey. They kind of asked them who they were, how they use media. But they had to write also blog posts. And they had to write them over the course of the day. And then after the 24 hours was over, to upload them. So they wrote about how they were feeling and what they were doing. Okay? You better watch out, because maybe your teachers are going to make you do this too. So, this is again my classroom. And I had asked them to work on their computers. So the findings, we wrote this up into a study. It made news around the world, because this was the first study where students, or people my age, were asked to unplug. So I'm going to go over some of the findings with you. Not formal findings, but, well, first I'm going to show you some of the headlines. So Reuters, U.S. students suffering from internet addiction. New York Times, an ugly toll of technology, impatience, and forgetfulness. Washington Post, fighting a social media addiction. It's a TV station in the United States. College students are internet addicted. You're seeing a trend here, right? Students addicted to social media, Huffington Post. Toronto, Canada paper. Are you addicted to social media? Study shows withdrawal symptoms similar to that drug, alcohol use. Independent from London. Students' addiction to media akin to drugs. China. U.S. students suffering from digital media addiction.
Nice statement.
They wrote it about in Chinese too, but. All right. So that's the headlines, and it was literally all over the world. What did it actually show? So I'm going to show you 5 slides of the highlights. These are quotes from students who took the unplugged exercise. I started to feel isolated and lonely. I noticed physically that I began to fidget, as if I was addicted to my media, and maybe I am. So, this highlight. Students use literal terms of addiction to characterize their dependence on media. Now, I'm not a doctor, nor was anybody in my team. Although since psychologists and psychiatrists have done these studies. But what was remarkable was students talking about going without media, particularly without their cell phones, their mobile phones, in terms of addiction themselves. And it wasn't just rhetorically, it wasn't just saying, I'm addicted to my media. I mean, I'm addicted to chocolate, I'm addicted to coffee. And I don't really mean that I can't live without it. It's just easy to say, I'm addicted. But they also talked about physical changes. They talked about fidgeting. They talked about thinking their phone was ringing when they had left it at home. They talked about having headaches. They talked about a lot of feeling depressed. About a lot of things as if they were. Highlight 2. Students hate going without media. In their world, going without media means going without their friends and family. Texting and IMing, messaging my friends gives me a constant feeling of comfort. When I didn't have my media, I felt quite alone and secluded. A lot of students didn't quite realize how they planned their day in their life. So if they picked Friday to go without media and they didn't have their phone, how do they meet up with their friends? In the United States, a lot of apartment buildings, you can't just walk in. You have to get buzzed in or call in. But if they don't have a phone, how do their friends know they're there? They say, well, I'll be there at 5. I don't know about you, but my students are never on time. So that wasn't working. 18 to 21-year-old college students are constantly texting and on Facebook, with calling and email just in seconds as ways of staying in touch, especially with friends. It became very clear that students texted with friends first, and then if there was too much to say texting, then they'd call their friends. But with their parents, or people, their teachers, they tended to email. What they learned was they had a hierarchy of friends. Some friends were Facebook friends only. Some friends were Facebook and texting. Some friends were Facebook texting and calls. Some friends were just email, and so on. And they realized they were kind of overlapping, but not necessarily the same. To a lot of students' surprise, they could actually live without TV. Whether it was on their computer or whether it was on a TV screen. But they really needed their music. Walking around town, they wanted their music. Studying, they wanted their music. Exercising, going to the gym, they wanted their music. The worst people complaining about music were athletes and people who went to the gym. People talked about it was really troubling to hear themselves breathe. Like if they're running, it's really distracting. Really difficult. People talked about running less far because they didn't have their music. Fifth one. Students show no significant loyalty to a news program, news personality, or even news platform. In other words, students actually get news, but not because they're going to a particular news site. It's coming via Facebook, or it's being pushed to them on their email, or they're talking to a friend, and they don't really care whether it's coming from a TV, newspaper, radio. They don't care. I just said that. So, as you just saw, we wrote this up formally, we released it. It made news around the world. So from that study, we conducted a global study. Okay. I started 9 years ago a program in Salzburg, Austria. It brings partner schools from around the world to Austria for 3 weeks in the summer. And next summer you guys are going to come, right? Seriously, okay? If you want to come to Austria next summer, talk to me. I can't pay for you, but so we have partner schools around the world. You'll see no Moscow. So I'm sorry? Yeah, it was a pity. So we worked with Slovakia, Uganda, China, Hong Kong, Argentina, Mexico, Chile, Lebanon, England, and the US. So we had students from each of those universities. Same system. 24 hours without media, take a survey, write it up. They wrote 500,000 words. Here I am in Russia, more than Tolstoy, longer than War and Peace. Okay? So appreciate that I had to research that. Okay? Feel sorry for me. So we analyzed the reports, we wrote it out, we made cool diagrams. You don't need to know any of these, but they were cool. Pretty, right? All right. What were our findings? That the world is pretty similar to the United States in this regard. And I know this already from Russia because as I've been talking about the United States, you guys are all me. All right. So I'm just going to give the example of China. And you can go online to our study and see the details, but so these are quotes from Chinese students. Media have become indispensable. When I was a child, I did not have these media, but I was very happy every day. Why? Why do I feel like this today? Why am I unhappy? Unhappy because she. Or he. Anxiety, dependence, loneliness. I miss my cell phone so much. You all have done this, right? You've left your mobile phone and you have to wait for somebody. And what do? When I stood somewhere alone, I just didn't know how to behave myself. You know, when you're at a bus stop, you're at a coffee shop waiting for somebody, they don't come, it's fine, you're just like this, right? Yeah, no problem. You don't have your phone, it's like, you don't even know what to do with your hands, right? I suddenly got a feeling of insecurity. My loneliness and helplessness spread, and the anxiety and desire to hold my phone became stronger. My own life is in the shadow of media. Mobile phones, TV, network, and so on have unknowingly melted into everyone's life. This is very depressing. If I go without media, there was no one to find me if I disappeared. To the real world, my existence could not be confirmed. Maybe in modern times, the media is just something like water. the majority of people cannot live without this necessity. All right. Pretty depressing. You may not be that bad off. It was always really interesting talking to students after they took this assignment. Some said, a lot easier than I thought. A lot of people said, not so much. People found it easier if they had planned ahead and, for example, got their boyfriend or their girlfriend to do it with them. We did have a couple parents call us, frantic because they couldn't reach their kids. Their kids had never, ever been out of touch for that long. So afterwards, we told students, let everyone know you're going to be without media. Right? So, as you saw, one issue for many students was just going unplugged. But what I didn't give you quotes from was a lot of students also talked about, all of a sudden they realized that the media they were getting, whether it was social media or news, entertainment, that they were just taking in without much thought. I do this exercise at the very beginning of the semester, and it's very interesting to see how students think at the beginning of the semester and then how they think at the end. So I had you evaluate individual photographs. Now I want you to evaluate a photo essay. So I'm going to show you some photos. They're going to be in a certain order, but I want you to be editors. Pick a news outlet or entertainment outlet that you like, and I want you to tell me what photograph you think should be the first photograph. What do you want to emphasize of the story? I'll tell you the story in a second. What's going to be most important to tell first? What's going to grab people's attention? What do you want to leave them with? What's the last photograph you want? So I want your first photograph and your last photograph. Here's the story. It's a story on women refugees in Somalia. So you're going to see some photographs about this refugee camp, and then about this particular set of buildings in a refugee camp which house women refugees, some of whom are victims of violence against women. Okay? So I'm going to show you 7 photographs, one by one, and then I'm going to show them all on the screen together. And I'm going to have you guys divide up into 2 or 3, and among 2 or 3 of you, you're going to decide which photograph's going to go first. All right? Now, this photo actually appeared in the New York Times. And so one of your questions is going to be, what do you think was used by the New York Times? You ready? Photo 1. It's a scene setter. This is what the refugee camp looks like. Photo 2, a medium shot. Do we have any photographers in the room? Photographer? The classic guidelines that an editor gives to a photographer is to take photographs like this. Take a wide-angle shot, take some medium shots. Another medium shot. Here we are inside the school for women. A portrait. It's a picture of a single person. Another portrait. a detail shot, just eyes. Finding an action shot. A teacher teaching the woman how to read. Right, those are your 7 photos. Here they are. I really never, yeah, I said there. Okay, so you three. I'm going to include the teachers here. You three. We're going to let Masha out of it. How about yellow to this guy here? How about the 4 of you guys there? And you guys in the back divide up as you want. So decide among yourselves. I want one voice from each of these groups. Which photo is going to be first? Which photo is going to be last? We're going to start here.
Because it's colorful. You want to look at it because there's too many colors, and it can reflect some specific of this country.
Okay. And you think the New York Times picked the same one or not?
No. We think that they put
6. Okay. So you want 3, and you think the New York Times picked 6. All right. Next group.
For New York Times, we would choose number 6.
So New York Times, number 6 and 2. So we have 2, 3, and 6 at this point. All right. Thank you.
The second one in the first place, but we believe that the New York Times would probably choose the 6th one.
6th one.
Well, it was actually pretty hard for us to choose because it's hard to understand which impression exactly you want to give to the readers. For example, I personally would remove, the 7th and the 3rd picture because they actually portray, the situation as somehow positive. But on the other hand, do you want to give your readers the idea that everything is okay, or do you want to give your readers the idea that everything is bad, or something is between? So it depends, about the motivation of the, the particular media outlet. So I guess we would put maybe either 6 if you want to give the strong impression, or if maybe a more general impression, the first one.
Okay. Well, that was so articulate, I might as well have you here as a media literacy expert. It was very, very clear about, is it going to be, what's the focus of the art? You guys.
Well, we came to the decision that the first picture should be number 2 because it shows people going to the camp.
The context.
Yeah, the context. And but we think that the photo was chosen by New York Times should be 6 as well.
Well, it's a strong picture because she had her strong eyes, yes, and she doesn't look very happy. So maybe
She looks like she's suffering something.
Yeah, and she's looking at you. Powerful. Last but not least.
Okay, the same thing actually. We picked the 6th picture to be the first because it's very emotional, and we think that the New York Times did the same. So,
All right.
A personal story, not any kind of information. That's why shot number 2 is for our readers is overloaded with information. We can see lots of faces, a guy with a gun. It's important, but not now, but not at the time of media.
so we have personal connection with picture number 6.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very good point to make. So, a lot of media want to grab your attention, want to draw you in, and then maybe we'll give you more information later on in the photo essay or in the article. Masha, you're the one person in the room who hasn't contributed. Who of all of these people do you think is right? For the New York Times. Obviously they're right for themselves, but for the New York Times, what do you think? Which
I liked number 1, but nobody even mentioned it.
well, that's clearly wrong.
Perhaps number 6 works better for the description. Number 2 or 6.
I had such hope, Masha. I had such hope.
I heard this.
The only team who even mentioned it. Right, small hand of applause. As you see with this exercise, there's no right or wrong answer. But as you work through the questions, how do you tell the story? You can see how the story slightly changes. You might be thinking of your audience. How do you get their attention? Who are they? How much information do they already have? Are they women? Are they old white guys? Who are they?